Everybody, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad that our friends are on Zoom. I don't know how many we have on Zoom.
How many?
How many on Zoom? All right. Okay. That's it. We're ready to start. We have 25 people on Zoom. So we have 25 people on Zoom. We have about 30 people here. And I'm Mary Hunt from WATER, the Women's Alliance for Theology, Ethics, and Ritual. I welcome you warmly on behalf of WATER. Diane New, the other co-director, is here. Welcome you warmly at the door. And this is the 29th meeting of the Feminist Liberation Theologians. Only 29.
We're only 29.
It would have been my word that we took. So we're very happy to have all of you. We're also experimenting, as you can see, with a hybrid effort. We are not all digital natives, but we have two wonderful women who are working with us. Caroline is from Harvard Divinity School. Yung Chung is from Boston University. They're graduate students, one recommended by Professor Wendy Malek, who's a longtime friend and colleague of ours, who is 5 hours late, delayed in her flight, or whatever. Will be here soon, but not at this meeting. And I particularly want to welcome the people who are on Zoom, and thank you so much for your participation, and thank you so much for being interested in the issues that are so dramatically urgent in our day. So we call the break the last meeting. Introductory comments, and then we will do our usual introductions, and from there we will proceed with hearing from some of our speakers who are members of this group, and will typically be making some comments both here and on Zoom. And then we will have an opportunity to meet in small groups to discuss what we want to do. And I'm gonna tip my hand right now, and I'm gonna say I think it's time for this group to make a strong statement, a strong collective statement. I don't know what it's going to be, but that's just my suggestion. There will be others, but I think among other things that we might do in this moment is a strong statement from the feminists. If we have 30 years of history, and some of us have gone on to their rewards, but others are following us. As you can see, these two young women who are here, who are coming on the heels and the footsteps of their own professors, this will be a constant. So I just want to put that in the back of your heads as we begin. Let us begin then with a land acknowledgement, which is an important thing to do whenever WATER has a gathering. This is a land acknowledgement from Old South Church. We are located, for those who are on Zoom, we are located at Old South Church in Boston. And I read you with reverence the land acknowledgement of this church. Old South Church in Boston resides on the ancestral and unceded land of the Massachusetts people, past and present, whose name was appropriated by the Commonwealth. We pay respect to the Massachusetts elders, past and present. We name and recognize the Massachusetts people as traditional stewards of this land, and we acknowledge the enduring relationship that exists between them and their traditional territories. We admit the truth of violence perpetrated against the indigenous peoples of the land, perpetrated moreover both in the name of this country and in the name of Christ, and make a commitment to uncovering that truth. We comprehend that a land acknowledgement is a small but important step toward ensuring a culture of respect, truth, and accountability in our church, in our city, in our Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and in our nation. So I invite you just to take a moment to acknowledge the people on whose land we sit here and on whose land we sit around the world on the Zoom. And if the people on the Zoom would like to, they may put just a mention of their lands, the people of their land, in the chat. And that will be a way of acknowledging the many lands and people on whose land we dwell. Let us take just a moment of silence to do so. Thank you very much. I want to extend warm thanks to the ministers and staff of Old South Church. The pastor here, John Edgerton, is a friend of our own Susan Brooks Thistlethwaite, and Rebecca Pasapona Dia is the facilities manager
who has been so gracious as to welcome us and to provide us with this space for our meeting. And it's a wonderful space for those of you who aren't here. It's just a wonderful space. And we are adjacent to the Thistlethwaite room, which is here behind me. And if we have when we have Thistlethwaite. And again, I want to thank Caroline and Chung for doing this IT work for us. There's a reason we named day. For those of us who are a little bit, we're not digital natives, but have come, we are immigrants to the digital world, legal or illegal. But we are in your debt and so delighted to have you as full participants in our meeting as well. So make sure that that happens. I was asked, this is just by way of an announcement, by a water colleague, Stephanie Budway, professor of worship at Vanderbilt Divinity School, to announce that tonight in this church at 7 o'clock, there will be a hymn sing with organists and singing put on by the Hymn Society on the theme of freedom, a hymn festival. All are welcome to this free event in this church. And she asked us to announce it because she thought some of you might want to join, again, coming out of the ARSBL and being in a friendly place like this. So now I turn to us, the Feminist Liberation Theologians Network. And I can tell you, this is always one of my happiest days of the year because some people say, oh, I dread going to the AAR if I can understand people. And this has been going on, as I said, for 29 years, since we were founded in 1995, when Elizabeth Schutzler-Fiorenza and I convened the group for the first time. By the way, I had the opportunity with Judith Plaskow to visit Elizabeth this morning. She is in a nursing home in Revere, north of here, just part of Boston, but north of the city. And she sends us her greetings, and I have taken our warm love and greetings to Elizabeth in the nursing home. So I just wanted to let you very happy to know that we would be meeting today. And I explained to her that this was our 29th meeting and how much she had done to assure that this project would get off the ground and now continue to fly. Last year, we met in San Diego with the theme, Elections Have Consequences. Indeed, they do. Remember a year ago in San Diego, we live in what I regret is a fascist period of American history. Many and varied horrors that have accrued so far, beginning with the dismantling of so much of what passed as a safety net for poor people in the US, threats to healthcare, lessening of support for those who are unhoused, cuts in Medicaid and SNAP programs. These horrors have passed since last we met. The recent government shutdown and this week's dismantling are just two examples of the turmoil we in the US are living in. Not to mention the presence of armed National Guard troops in the nation's capital, scant blocks from my house, and the growing presence of ICE agents throughout the country, including those who come to the office building in which water is housed and take people away shackled. Our a place where immigrants who have ankle bracelets could check in next door to our building. And of course, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. They check in and then they check out. And they're taken away in shackles. So let's bring around downtown. The efforts to root out immigrants not only does that, but strikes terror in the hearts of millions who realize they could be next. I will not reverse the various members of the president's cabinet who are ill-prepared for their positions, nor will I mention the growing consensus that the president was deeply involved with people who perpetrate sexual crimes against women and young girls. Of great interest, however, are the international dimensions of this work, especially relations with China and with Russia, wars in the Middle East and Ukraine that continue unabated, and the very precarious global economic situation precipitated by this nation's imposition of tariffs. So we come together in the midst of what I think of as a break the glass moment, a time to name the tremendous problems we're living, a time to come closer to one another in the work that we do to resist, to organize, and to build movements that are not only resisting, but movements that are creating a new, brighter, more just, safer, and concert with one another. To build that safe kind of public statement that adds to the chorus of people of goodwill who call out for justice. So we begin as we always do in this event. We begin with introductions in this room. And while we do that, I'm going to invite people on Zoom through the magic of our technicians to move into small groups themselves, have an opportunity to introduce themselves in those small groups, and then to rejoin us group by group as they finish, as we go around the circle very quickly, very efficiently, to say who we are and maybe a word about what we do. Okay? So this will be a two-part process.
They're doing their thing, we're doing our thing.
They're doing their thing. What I would say is, we would say who we are, maybe where we're from,
and how we
engage in existence. What is one thing we do? So for example, I'm very co-director
with Diane New of Water.
with Diane Brewer
So
Water, Silver Spring, Maryland. In addition to writing and sponsoring educational and spiritual events, I go to my porch every
and
night
bang
and bang
a
potlets.
time-honored
And a time-honored tradition of nonviolence began in 1830 in France, has been used in Argentina and Chile. It's a nonviolent way of saying no to the armed national troops, and I will do it on the pitch until at least February when they leave. So if the neighbors think, oh, those crazy ladies
They're out there banging their
hands again.
Yes, we are.
The dogs will howl, the children ask their
We'll be
parents.
banging.
We'll be banging until the armed troops are gone.
That's just one.
That's just one. So, we don't have to go in order, we can just pop up as you wish, or we can order just more efficient, what do you prefer? You want to start now? Maybe that's you. Again, welcome. Okay.
I'm Rita, Nakashima. I got laid off in July, so I'm now retired. And also, my active resistance is to continue offering a community course on moral injury to chaplains and social workers and clinical people. To help them give spiritual care to all the devastated.
Okay, my name is Emily Leyes.
All
right, my name is Emily Leyes Silverman. I come from the Ramadash unceded Ohlone people's lands, San Francisco. And I have generations in my household doing forms of resistance. So my youngest Gen Z child is right now at Alcatraz, organizing with some bodies to do protests. And some of them are getting arrested, some of them are around me. So I really admire the Gen Z. One of my millennials she is working just in LA and she works with the food bank. She makes sure that immigrants get food for the week so they don't have to leave their house. To round up and my personal stuff, we give refuge. And she makes sure that.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Emily.
Renata
Rose.
I think I have been working on what I think the greatest hypocrisy of Kiriaki is to invent nuclear weapons in order to kill the entire, not only people, but the entire environment of the earth and maybe cyberspace. Making the connections, I think, is the most important thing, making the connection with the money that is wasted on nuclear weapons, 100 billion every year, and then there is no money for healthcare, for the poor, for education, for all the things that could be done if we didn't have to store, produce, taking care of the waste of the production of nuclear weapons. For me, and I think women are fought for all the women united of the world, because I can't imagine any woman wanting to spend money on nuclear weapons in order to kill the maximum of people. So that's been my mission.
Well, I've been doing it for 92 years. So
Yes.
I think there's something.
I'm Jane Redmond. I live in Boston. I grew up in France and just came back from 3 weeks there. So I'm a hybrid person. I'm also in transition. I left a lot of committees and processes in the Diocese of Massachusetts recently to devote myself to my writing, working on a memoir.
And I, for 7 years, was one of the ecumenical and religious officers for the Episcopal Diocese, and so I'm deeply committed to relationships between religions and between people who identify as religious and people who do not. The Episcopal Parish, which everyone shares its facility with a Reformed synagogue, and I often go to their service as well, both because I love it and because I have Jewish ancestry.
Thank you.
Karen Hessel, I'm retired from the very formerly communist National Council of Churches. I was with the Justice Movement Program, and now I'm working on the Justice in Maine as a volunteer with the Maine Council of Churches and some environmental organizations and so forth. Churches mostly doing advocacy. Mostly doing advocacy.
I'm Janice.
I'm Janice.
My areas of resistance is the classroom, decentering oneness and American hegemony, so pushing it out, and writing. And raising 2 strong Black kids in New York City.
Wonderful.
Teaching you about the Theological Seminary in New Jersey.
I want to get plugged into that. Welcome. Please.
Hi, I'm Alice Woolley. I'm Scotland, UK. I'm a research fellow at Queen's University in England. I've spent the last 4 years running a project that gives additional holistic wraparound support to women doing PhDs in theology to seek to support their well-being, particularly spiritually and personally, whilst studying theology.
Wonderful. I'm glad you made it.
Yeah, I'm Teresia, from Nairobi, Kenya. Teaching at the University of Nairobi Philosophy and Studies. My work with sisters in the zone of my life and also involved in media, project writing, trying to consider lots of how to
Wonderful. Glad you're here.
I'm Kathleen. I'm from the Wisconsin area. I'm working on 2 volumes of practice about women in religion, one of which is the history of women's cause, so people have undercover women, so people have information, please share. And I sit on a bridge twice a week with a big giant.
Great. And you're having a session tomorrow at 1 o'clock?
Yes.
Good.
I'm with McEwan. I am retired from St. Bonaventure University in Western New York State. But my hometown is Chicago, so I live there. And I am interested in having more women to be to have pages on Wikipedia. And so this is a project that I'm doing.
Right. Sitting right next to the lead editor of that project.
Well, okay, I did say, should one this to interview a person that she's writing the chapter.
Oh, there you go. Are you a consistent sister? Are you a consistent sister? Yeah. Barbara did her.
Yes.
Well,
Thank you, Kwok Pui-Lan, my students all have chaplain training. I've worked in hospitals for many years, and so now, I work as part of the pastoral care team for Arlington Street Church, right down the street, in the University Church. And there's really two, very quickly, my actions providing support to a lot of individuals devastated, by what's going on, and trying to make sense of living in this fascist society. And also, I'm with the International Congregation of Unitarian Universalists Women that we work with UN advocacy, and that we are part of the UN Conference Status for Women. So
wonderful.
I'm Nancy Corcoran, a sister of St. Joseph. My ministry is my resistance church. And basically I help women as a transgender, intersex, and queer kids are right.
Long strive. Right.
I'm Rosemary B. I'm from New Orleans. And lost our Planned Parenthood and 15,000 people are without health care, women, friends, etc. So we're reconstituting it, we're recreating the traditions about us. I've been working pretty tirelessly since July, really.
I'm Peter's Ruth speaking on Plenary includes doctrine of the Winston, Theologians Seminary and Community Church. My active religion and my work and my teaching on trying to carry the the historical backdrop helps us understand the current rule of states.
We await it. Thank you. Second.
Thank you, Mary Hunt, co-director, co-founding co-director of Water, Women's Alliance for Theology and Ritual. Our resistance is the challenge of incorporating all this political mess into ritual and spiritual practices. Most recently, I was visiting a 3-day retreat in New Jersey, and right in the middle of the retreat, as a part of the retreat, we went to No King's Forest, all of everybody, and came back and had a big protest in the midst of the retreat. That's what we do. That's the challenge. It's great to see you all.
Thanks, Sam.
Hi, my name is Nakashima. I teach at Style College teaching and make the classroom the most ready space.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Rita. I'm from Chile. Finishing my PhD here at Boston College. I just moved to education last week. So I wrote about the sexual abuse crisis in the church, and especially I work with women survivors. So also with my book proposal in my background for both describing art. And I will say my resistance in addition to academic work. I'm also part of a movement in Chile called Feminist. That's a feminist movement that started with the Catholic Church, but it's bigger than that now. And yeah, so it's Chile women from all social classes, from different parts of the country. As I said, some Catholics are not just gathered together to nurture our faith and work with social justice and their justice.
Would you say your name one more time, please?
Soledad, Soledad.
Well,
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Deborah Meter Saxon. I'm from Indianapolis, and I'm the program director at the Center for Interfaith Cooperation. We are involved with education and service. I was in Church of AmeriCorps, but it got terminated at the end of April. But we do a lot of different activities, and I'm also an affiliate professor at Christian Theological Seminary in Indianapolis. And my real love are the texts that reflect women's voices, like the Gospel of Mary and Acts of Peter. So I work on those. So nice to meet you all.
I'm Ganley. I'm senior research associate with the Weingarts Institute for Catholic Research in London. And for those who don't know, it's a very liberal Catholic think tank. My resistance is my research and my writing publication on early Christian women priests and the clergy. And on Sunday morning, I'm reading a presentation on the iconographic evidence of early Christian same-sex marriage.
welcome.
My name is Kwok Pui-Lan. I am from Thistlethwaite. I'm resistant lately involved solidarity with Palestinians. So on Sunday, at the American Academy Vision, we had a section that celebrated the publication of the book, Launch the Author Class. And I am also editing the first one of this subject, the Anglican Church and Palestine. Thank you.
Wonderful.
My name is Kathleen. I'm Swiss. Yeah, and this ended with my partner. We
we speak English so So, my main work, I have two main things to do now. The one is research for the family archives and research for the women community. Women are there, just achievement, women, whatever they are, housewives, wives of people, teachers, everything. And it's amazing what there is once you start. And I like to find. But my main concern is the climate change. And Elizabeth and I are members at the seniors, the climate seniors, Switzerland. They have achieved, they have won case in European they went to the European goal, and they achieved that, and they want to have justice for all women, and they got it really at the end. And not over because politics will not accept the results. However, the climate I think is very important also for justice. And it hurts me personally to see what's happening. In Switzerland, which is getting worse. We politics and destroy landscape and cities. And so this is where I'm involved.
Wonderful, thank you.
The climate feminists are together with Greenpeace. The old ladies go to the second fire, not the ladies go in and cooperating with Greenpeace, which is a young organization.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth, that was doing the same, and also Kathleen Monster and traveling together. For the court, yes, that was a very important case, very important case. And the Swiss women were portrayed in a very proper way for the court to make up their presence known. That the particular effect of climate change on older women is a violation of our human rights. So,
the main ideas which I just thought would have involved
Elizabeth also has a blog, which is great. Let's continue, thank you.
I'm Justin Louis. I'm a lot of my life is resistance. My professional life is as a social worker for adults with learning disabilities. I deal a lot with poverty, poor housing, illiteracy, people being disconnected from the societies in which they live, or healthcare. In my spare time, I am a member of the Scottish Green Party, so very pro-feminist political party in Scotland. I do a lot of campaigning, a lot of canvassing, trying to improve people's lives and the life of the planet, the society, going across party,
Great.
to the left of the centre, political party.
Thank you. Pleasure hearing. Let's go ahead.
My name is Rita Ernst. I'm from Berlin. I'm a research coordinator at the Center for Advanced Studies in Heritage and Transformation. And as one of the examples, I'm kicked the NAPO project. I'm supporting Ukrainian and promoting their work in Ukrainian artists now mostly exiled.
Thank you.
My name is Ulrike Ernst Auer. I have my heritage of resistance from the peaceful revolution in East Germany, so that point my background, and I have revolutionary ever since within the field of content theology, but comparative religious studies, work against violence, and also to make the Eastern European and Eastern German voices heard, and also to reconcile post-colonial and post-secular concerns.
Thank you. And Janice?
Yeah, hi, my name is Gianna Font, I'm a graduate of the university. I've been in the streets since February 8th by myself, and now there's more than millions of people. And I canvassed for Yes on 50, they had it passed. Two, and I've been at both Kings, and I'm running about two women for our Wikipedia columns.
Great.
Ganley, I'm teaching at Alex School of Theology in Denver, Colorado. Two things, my classroom and supporting my daughter who is an activist and lobbyist in Washington, D.C.
Wonderful. We need her.
I'm Hazel. I'm from the Philippines, but I'm studying at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary. I'm now in my second year PhD program. Mostly my work is involved with a farming community, mostly women who are resisting oppression against resisting the oppression and advocating for genuine land reform. Thank you.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Zoom, if I'm screaming at you. I'll point it this way. My name is Caroline Perkins. I'm originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma, but I'm here getting my Master's of Theological Study at Harvard Divinity School. And I would say right now my active resistance is continuing my education in the face of a government who doesn't want me to continue my education. So that's what I'm up to.
Very good. And?
Hello, my name is Rita. I'm a fourth year doctoral student at NTU. My active resistance is largely in my academic learning and writing, especially I'm studying confucianism for my doctoral studies, and I'd like to integrate what has been oversimplified or omitted by colonialism within the whole Confucian tradition.
Wonderful.
I have a book that just came out last month. It's an anthology that I brought in my Sudanese these feminists subjugated voices nobody's talking about the horrors of Sudan. So we have articles in there. You go check it out. I get more. Wonderful.
Thanks to know. Remember, we have one more person.
Yeah.
Your name, where you're from, and what things you're doing to resist.
My name is Rita from Portland, Oregon, and I am a PhD student in Berlin. My goal is basically literature. And I'm part of the ELCA and we are for the protocols campaign, which is
Wonderful. Glad you're here. Taking off her coat, it's the great Dr. Rita for a long time friends and colleagues. And so Rita, welcome to you. I think everybody knows your work. Love to be women on the things. Working on slavery. If you want to say something else about your former research, that's what you're getting. Get your breath.
Yes.
We've all introduced ourselves. We have 25 minutes.
And they would be here sooner. So I continue to work and lecture and celebrate and the other topics and work. Some of my other actions are now including the Jewish Voice Peace, and I am on the Graduate Council, and especially on the letter writing committee. It was the always protests to schools when they fire people or hinder students in their activism, that also especially free research and teaching. And I also work with, and this is something that I think is helpful for everyone who's planning any who's planning any different acts of any sort. I work with the National Lawyers Guild as a legal observer, and as a legal observer, I go in and I'm like a camera. I don't take sides, I don't participate, I take notes. I take notes on everything, so that if later the police come and say, at 3 o'clock there was a riot, I say, I wrote at 3 o'clock quiet. So if you're planning anything, it is a very important resource for you to have for the civil rights of you and of anyone else. So those are a couple of things.
Thank you so much for that and welcome. Are our Zoom people now back? Is everybody back? Yeah, let them all back. I'm gonna offer a round of applause for
if we went home now, I would go home full of the many things that everyone is doing and the many more things that our students and colleagues are doing. And it's very inspiring. So again, thank you. This is just being together. It's also an act of resistance. And I think we have to be clear about that and become more and more an act of resistance. The other thing is just to segue in our folks back is coming out very shortly. It's just coming out. Catholicism and their beginning. The lost manuscript of Mary Daly. Who knew that Mary Daly had another manuscript that came between the Church of the Second Section beyond God the Father? And this is that manuscript with 5 essays by 5 colleagues about why she aborted it, as it were, at chapter 6 and continued with beyond God the Father. But just so you think about the history and roots of feminist theology, this is a new expression of those roots that will be coming out. It's January publication, but I think you can get it now. I think you can actually buy it here. So I'm just going to pass it on to Tantalize because I think it's very fun. This person who is the editor is Meg Smith, who is a graduate of Fordham University, and she found the manuscript in Daly's archives where Jennifer Rising and I had put it without even knowing it. And came to water and asked if we would be part of helping to resurrect it, and then a friend of mine at Oxford decided he would publish it, and there you have it. So it's a happy new thing. It's just out. I thought it would be kind of a fun way to connect with our roots. A resurrection. Anyway, it's just it's just to say this is part of our history, and it's something that we look forward to. So with that, and with thanks to everybody, and I hope the groups were good. I hope that the Zoom people had a good experience. I'd like to offer three of our colleagues who are going to make very brief remarks, very focused remarks, 6 minutes or so apiece, and I'll keep track of that because we have a big agenda for a short time. But I've asked Kwok Pui-Lan and Susan Thistlethwaite and Rita Nakashima, who are, in my view, very trusted thinkers and people who are working in communications and people who keep an eye on figure out the pulse of what's happening. And so with that, I pass the word to them. First to Kwok Pui-Lan, who, as we all know, is a longtime professor at the Divinity School and Vanderbilt Divinity School, now distinguished scholar. Back at the Divinity School, wherever it is. She is not only a distinguished scholar, but a writer, an Anglican, an activist, a podcaster on Rock and Roll. If you haven't treated yourself, on our podcast, Rock and Roll. She most recently had Tracy West on, talking about gender-based violence. She had many very interesting colleagues of ours in the field who have been part of the podcast. So with that, Dr. Kwok Pui-Lan.
Thank you very much. I'm asked why the meeting signifies a clear demonstration we are entering a multipolar world defined by big power rivalry, especially between China and the United States. This is going to affect everyone living on this planet, men and women, non-binary people, and children. That is why I want to say, believe or undergirding all this discussion of the competition of global hegemony and the rise of authoritarianism in different parts of the world, we can discern the qualifications of political strongmen, whether Xi or Trump is stronger. The spread of toxic masculinity and a disregard of vulnerable population, especially women and children. Some would say feminist liberation theologies has failed because we have advocated for decades
equality between women and men and non-binary people, but we did not make a dent in global politics. Some younger generation told my generation that feminist theology is passé because it belongs to the previous generation. But I want to argue for the opposite. Feminist liberation theologies are needed more than ever, but it needs to be broadened to address our future. So I want to talk about several ways that needs to be broadened. You remember one of the slogans for the feminist movement was the personal is political. Today, we need to think about political in new ways, given the times that we live in. Cameron, a social scientist and critic, Archie Memby, talks about this age or this era as an era of brutalism. I want to underscore that word. Because we have caged humanity, he said, caged humanity in places like Gaza. And can you believe the United States is sending those so-called illegal immigrants to a third country that they did not belong, they have never been to, they did not speak the language. And around the world, we saw women abused, especially in sexual trafficking. So this is a time of brutalism. And how can we look at the world's situation and come up with suitable strategies for resistance and change? The second point I want to make is, for some time, we have argued for an intersectional approach to feminist liberation theologies. More than ever, we see that gender and sexuality are embedded in larger power matrix shaping economics, economy, and culture. Some of you, of course, have heard in the United States in the past several weeks, we have been talking about the release of the Epstein files. And this, of course, underscored the very intricate relationship between abuses of women, the power elites, and masculinity that is really using this toxic masculinity to oppress people. But there is also one thing that we need to pay much attention to. That is evangelical Christianity. Those evangelical Christians, they would be willing to put their moral compass at bay when they supported a 3 times married, convicted sexual offender and continues to support right-wing politics. And I also want to share with you from my vantage point of a long observers of Chinese politics. We cannot talk about China, United States in competition because they have ideological difference. No, China is very capitalist, practicing a form of state capitalism. So it is no longer ideological difference. It is not Samuel Huntington's proposal of a conflict of civilizations. You go to Shanghai, very Americanized, no conflict, okay? Big Apple store. And then I would like to suggest, as I learned from those who are following global capitalism, the United States and America, we should talk about as inter-imperial. They have built up a symbiotic relations over the past 2 decades to build up the world that we live in. And then how can feminist liberation theology look at the inter-imperial dynamics between not only United States and China, but Russia as well? And that is why I want to propose all of us to think about what kind of feminist spirituality that can help us. Sometimes I feel depressed you look at the news, you are trying to find what is something that is positive, isn't it? So then, what is the spirituality of resilience and also resistance? I thought I would be retiring since last summer because I officially retired from teaching. Lo and behold, I think that all of us needs to speak more publicly to intervene in the age of brutalism, inter-imperial dynamics, and the subjugation of women, non-binary, and children to poverty and marginalization. That is why at 73, I began this YouTube channel, my Substack, and my podcast. And I hope in whatever ways and in wherever you are, that we keep this spirit of resistance alive.
Thank you so much. I said I could have gone home. I'm glad I didn't. Thank you. And it's true. And it's a wonderful project. And I expect many more such things from you and with you. So thank you. We turn now to Susan Thistlethwaite, Professor Emerita and President Emerita of Chicago Theological Seminary. She is a regular Substack writer. No Fear, Religion, and Politics is the name of her Substack. It's all in the report, by the way. You don't have to take notes, as we don't. And Susan Thistlethwaite is not only an accomplished theologian and an active political person, but she's also very much involved in writing stories. She's written 5 of them. They're fantastic. I read them cover to cover. I even sometimes get to read them before they're published and help out a little few small matters. And it is one of the most creative ways that I have seen our colleagues engage in this work. So can we get Susan?
Yes, we're working on it.
Wait, take your time, take your time.
Hey, we're good to go. We persevere, God knows. The brutalism is helpful, Kwok, very helpful. So I'm going to do a brief summary of feminist liberation theology and then suggestion of what we need to be doing now to bring down fascism. All right, feminist liberation theology is essential this time. Just as feminist liberation theology is essential to understand the fascism of our times. It is the most important intellectual exercise that people can engage in. I would like in the second half to talk about nonviolent ways we can disrupt and disorganize this fascism. Fascism is not limited to the US, as Pui-Lan so effectively talked about, but its ideology is working its way through American political structures like a toxic oil spill. Now, liberation theology begins with contextual analysis. This is its major contribution over the course of theological development. Oppression does not just happen. It is created. It's the result of structures that are systematically constructed to suppress most people, steal their labor and their visions for their own lives, and blame designated victims. Fascist political structures depend on the lie, in particular, are superior and have the duty to lord it over women and everybody else. That's accompanied by the vast majority of white cisgender men not being able to succeed in this economy that is constructed to keep them down and keep them blind to that fact. And to blame some designated victims. Feminism is experiential. And it begins where the pain is. One thing we do as feminists is we pay attention to the pain. I'm sure, given what was said in our small group and other groups may have said as well, this is a painful time. And it is important to actually pay attention to the pain, because the pain is a signal that all is not well. It has to come to the center. It's the scream of a child on an island filled with male predators. It's the muffled cry of a battered woman who's stuffed a pool in her mouth as she's being beaten so the neighbors won't hear. The gasping and shock of immigrant women and children and men as they are being taken away for no good reason. The horror inflicted on LGBTQI people who are shamed and blamed, so they will harm themselves. Why else cancel the funding for suicide hotlines? The common denominator is pain. Pain is created, it is literally constructed in order to prop up this ideology of fascism. Now, contextual analysis of fascism in feminist liberation theology must include economic analysis. The world runs on unpaid labor of women. Without that, it would collapse. It's very insight. Just parenthetically, I got a hold of some old Dennis the Menace comic books, reading it to the grandchildren. I stopped because every single adult woman in the Dennis the Menace comics was wearing an apron. Everyone. Oh, the hell with that. You know, I was like, no, children, these are not good. We're going to throw them away. But the key insight of feminist liberation theology is that it is constructed to steal the labor of women and the poor and the disenfranchised. Now, for the second part of this, let's talk about how we can knock them down or at least cripple them. Because it's a system and it's constructed. So what's constructed, you can come along and knock some of the props out. And that, I think, is our job right now. One thing that is essential of the women's movement, and I think we got to bring that back. It's important to actually see what's happening, not only to others, but to ourselves. We know it's bad, but critical consciousness allows us to help others come to an awareness to actually see what's happening. And even amongst very well-meaning people, there are more benign explanations of what is happening that can corrupt their vision of what has to change. I have taught using the work of Brazilian educator Paulo Freire for a long time. And Freire would come into villages in Brazil and he'd set up his little flip chart and he'd just start labeling things in the village with the word. And he asked about that warehouse over there with a bunch of sacks of grain. One pile was very big, the other was small. Why is one big and the other one small? Asked Freire. Well, the big one is for the overseer and the little one is for us to keep in the village. And he taught them the word inequality and they threw him out of Brazil. When you see, you can make a change. we can see ourselves, we can help others get in touch with the pain and see the pain for what it is, the constructive effort to paralyze people so they do not resist. In our organizations and our political networking, our feminist collaboration, in our own minds, we have to keep speaking and demonstrating and creating a ruckus wherever we can to show the structures of inequality. We will weaken them. And when we do, we can bring them down. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So Theater of War is performing, and if you know that Greek play, the wife has a major role in it, and the Academy Award nominated actor David Strathairn is also going to be performing in it. And it's a play about moral injury. So the Theater of War was actually inspired by Jonathan Shea's work on moral injury to create this thing they do. So that's just an invitation at 11 tomorrow for it's the AAR. I've been trying for 10 years to get them to the AAR.
Great.
But so I knew I was going to have to follow Pui-Lan and Susan, who are two of my favorite theologians and good friends, and I love them dearly. So I kept changing my mind about what I should say.
Just be brief.
Yes, I want to come in on a slant on this question of religion. There's a relatively new book by Brian Kemp called Goliath's Curse. It's a 5,000-year study of the rise of empire related to agriculture and the development of surplus everythings. So you have to have land and resources for surplus food, and then you have people who need to organize it, and it starts to create an imperial structure where one person is got a lot of power and a lot of food, and you need labor, so you have slavery, and you have poorly paid workers. Property ownership of land becomes an issue, territories, standing militaries. He does a global study. He has the Aztecs and the Incas and the Romans and the Mesopotamia, all of that. It's a certain period of human evolution in which settled life and agriculture become possible. Rome wasn't really an empire till it conquered Egypt and had the wheat from the Nile, so it had a bigger navy than an army to protect that shipment. So empires need assets. They need to be able to control assets. That's, I think, one of the primary Goliath's curse. All empires collapse. And it takes them somewhere between 200 and 400 years to collapse, but every single empire has collapsed. We may be at the end of the American empire. I do not, he's very clear about this at the end of the book. It's not just an ancient book, it's a discussion of what now. And he notices that there are several factors that cause the collapse. One is the power gets too top heavy. It just gets accumulated too much at the top to the point that people revolt. They're so angry they revolt and overthrow the empire, which has happened in China multiple times. India also. They also will just leave. They will just go back into the forest and start foraging. They stop being agriculturalists and they become hunter-gatherers again. There's archaeological evidence that when empires collapse, the aftermath, there are fewer people usually because of the destruction, but they're healthier than they were under the empire. That's true of Rome. When Rome collapsed, people got healthier. So these are features of empire. What I noticed in reading the book is this is also the era of the rise of monotheism. In Egypt, in Mesopotamia, in Persia, you get monotheism, which is a parallel structure to empire, right? It's absolutely, you can see it. So there's a power at the top and everybody relates to the power at the top as saving them or giving them things, whatever. And there's often a lot of benevolence, philanthropy in empires too. It's not just that they steal and have slaves, they also the bread dole in Rome kept the people from rioting. They didn't have, so those are features. And I think that this is where we are now with capitalism. Some small number of people own most of the assets in the world, and Elon Musk, Zuckerberg, Putin, et cetera, et cetera. And so the factors so people riot, they leave. There's a pandemic that kills so many people that the empire has to be nice to the workers. That happened in Europe. And the final thing is climate change. 100 years of drought in Spain, 100 years, the Mesopotamia turned into a desert. The place where the assets, the land, the fertile stuff disappears. And so the assets disappear. Those are all parts of the collapse of empires. And the problem with that model is that some of that's happening now. We can see it. We have a Goliath of tech and millionaires, billionaires, whatever. And people are beginning to revolt more and more. The problem with that model is that climate change is now global. There's not going to be another place we can go that has a better land situation. That it's a global problem. And we have nuclear weapons. The empires have nuclear weapons. We don't, they have them. There are questions about how we as human beings will survive globally. Even if there's a nuclear war, there are likely to be some pockets of human survival. But that would be like a plague beyond all plagues. And so I think that those are things that are important to pay attention to. And so I think to have what we need as a resistance to survive all of this, we need to be as interconnected as possible, to reach across our movements, not to silo around our identities, but really to start connecting in some way. And I learned the value of this when I was doing a Truth Commission on Conscience and More. We had 100 commissioners that were asked to do consensus document, and we had military people. And at the end of a day of intense conversation around this concept of moral injury, what it does to people who have to go to war, the head of the Mennonite Central Committee stood at the open mic. This is this is a historic pacifist organization, right? He stood up and said, I believe we pacifists have a lot to repent of. It was not what I expected him to say. It's because we let the US government define what a pacifist is. And he said, I have come to understand, and talking to veterans in the military and people in the military, everyone is a conscientious objector. And everyone, including people in the military, should have the right to refuse to deploy to a war that they regard as immoral and unjust. And they do not have that right in the United States. England had that right during World War II. So it's existed, but so he was willing to talk. He said, just war people and us pacifists, we actually agree on about 95% of the principle of just war. We just disagree that a just war is even possible. And he said, and we've never been asked before to cooperate, and where we can reach across those lines, because I think that moral injury is the energy in hate groups. It's aggrieved victim energy, and that's Trump's superpower. And it's a lot of working class and rural men, white men who have no futures and no sense of life purpose or social worth. And they're angry and they're mean and they're violent, but underneath that all is a broken spirit. And how we can find, I'm not saying take care of them, but how ridicule, skepticism, shaming, none of that's helpful. None of it's helpful. If I can't engage them in a decent conversation,
Yeah, this is so helpful as it follows upon what Susan and what Pui-Lan have said. I'm just very edified by this discussion, and I want to make very clear that we will try to get written comments, these comments in writing. And as we did last year, put them in the Journal of Feminist Studies in Religion. I think this is the kind of analysis that's coming out of the feminist liberation theologians movements that need. This is the info to be out. Let me turn very briefly, and I'm going to say very briefly to my dear colleagues in different parts of the world who are going to just make very brief interventions about what's going on. How are you reading things? Tracy McEwan and Kath McPhillips, with thanks first of all to Rita for a marvelous. I think the flowers. Yeah. No. Okay. So your absolute top line takeaway. Sorry, we're getting a little feedback.
Okay, well, I'll start. Just very briefly, an update of the sort of state of play in Australia is that earlier this year in May, we had an election. And in that election, the Labor government, the Labor Party, which is already in government, was re-elected astoundingly. So it was really a huge defeat of conservative parties who did have a pro-Trump agenda. And that's really, it was very heartening for us, but also there's a danger in that the conservative option has just been so wiped out. And of course, the rise of the far right voice has kind of taken over. So I just want to talk about the TEAL movement, TEAL. So this is a community-based political movement. It's led by women and it's supported by people who are tired of party-based politics and they want a different form of engagement in the political sphere. So this group of women sit on the crossbench and they have the power to amend bills. And what's behind this is the groups who are into doing politics in a different way. So just a short example, the Sydney Alliance movement based on principles of justice and diversity. So this is fed into this. And there's a lot of support for building a social contract, climate change response, cost of living, gender equity, housing and health, and, the big issues. So in Australia, a rejection of Trump-style politics. But as I said, the rise of the far right is a major concern, especially for young men looking forward. So the big question is how people handle diversity and division, which has become polarized and which we've been talking about today, and especially in the online environment. So handing over to Tracy.
Hi, thanks so much, Catherine. Hi to everybody in the room. I'm not sure whether you can see me. I'm little on my screen. Oh, here I am. So in Australia, we are seeing this transformation that's resulting from really powerful forms of social alliance. Christian movements, even feminist movements, Australia have a lot to learn. Understanding of feminist lips, as I think has already been said today, and we need to fight middle class movements. What Kath and I are seeing the need to do is to look at the underlying paradigms, learn patriarchy, and we need to create a shift and address the lack of understanding about what intersectionality can bring to these movements and these groups. So what we're doing is, and there's a group of us turning to Aboriginal theologians and scholars who are producing methodologies about living and working together and moving forward. So just two examples of this are the basket weaving as a theoretical framework and methodology developed by Kelly Humphrey, who's just about to complete her doctoral studies at the Australian Catholic University, and Dr. Jen Rumble, who's just completed her PhD studies, and she's developed what's called a circular methodology. And so I guess that's where we're turning in our work, and we'd love everybody to join us. And just one note, we are all grieving in Australia the death of a wonderful feminist theological and political thinker and colleague this year, Professor Marion Maddox, in September. So she will be deeply missed. Hope that was brief enough, Mary.
Thank you very much. Yes, and I'm going to turn to a very absolutely brief message from you in Canada, Rosemary Ganley.
a member of the Order of Canada.
Mary, I play hockey, so you can interrupt me just by the referee's signal. I'm wearing from Seattle the Resist Frog t-shirt, but it's elevated by my Order of Canada pin. I was a lot of disappointment, and I was ignored by 60 years old for national work. So there's 8,000 of us Order of Canada people. So you just could be mildly impressed by that. What I want to do is express the anti-Americanism that's global, but I want to say too that I'm dependent on water and the scholars that have spoken today to give me every good idea, which and I'm grateful for. And I was in a small group with Marie Fortune, who I've admired for years. What my anti-Americanism is your Caligula. And how did you elect that man, and who has insulted? We're very resentful. We're not pleased. We're not about to be invaded, but I wouldn't put it past that regime. We're bullied and insulted.
Kindly for them.
Made to hurt.
Yes.
And I can't understand the American voters, and the failure of your education system was so little critical thinking that 70 million were Americans. But he's been worse. He's been worsening. We're 40 million, and we're considerably left of center. We embrace the terms. Well, I'm rejoicing at Mom Danny. Any son of Miranair has got to be respected. The filmmaker. And can America throw this plague off? Well, this is my ideas. And I'm not a scholar. I'm a low-level journalist. But I'm a public theologian, but I just can't talk about God. I think we should become international and interfaith. I learn a lot from Muslim resistors and indigenous resistors. We have a Canadian women's group called Catholic Network for Women's Equality, 140 women from coast to coast, French and English. Our bishops are not oppressive. This is a Catholic take on things, but they're invisible. And that's an opportunity for feminists of faith to move in and take some public space. And I want
to thank you. Yeah, can you make sure? Yeah, Rosemary, I'm going to thank you for your comments and move us along because we need some time here now for our groups. And I'm going to hold Monica Macher for another occasion. And since you've already introduced yourself, would you like to just make Ulrike the last absolutely synthetic comment, and then we will move into our groups?
I only want to say something positive because of the very short time. In Germany, it's known now for right-wing developments, but there's also hope. The young people vote for the left party. With hope, looking to New York and to the work of Zoran Mandani. And so I think we can connect with all those people who have new ideas of how to overcome epistemic and economic and systemic violence. Thank you.
So there we have a European view, we've had an Australian view, we have had a Canadian view with thanks to Rosemary Ganley. I'm going to give the very last, most briefest of all words to Monica Macher, who's in Ecuador. And then we're going to be done and we're going to talk to each other and we're going to figure out a very concrete next step. Monica Macher, absolutely briefly, but go ahead.
Thank you. It's great to hear everyone. It's great to be here. And I guess just to say, in Ecuador, we're experiencing the same militarization of civil society. also a growing authoritarianism. And as you know, El Salvador has a far right government, and we're following that model here, along with that of Argentina. And I guess, I mean, I have a lot to say, but let me just focus on what we're doing, because we've been living under a state of exception, which means the civil rights, basic civil rights have been waived for all citizens. And this is an internal armed conflict that the government has called. So anyone who's protesting, he can call a terrorist and then bring military out against them. So, but what we've been doing is, in the faith community, we definitely made a public statement. We also made a public statement from the academic community. In the academic community, we're also writing books that are interfaith, interdisciplinary, and international to try to understand this phenomenon, and also feminist perspectives on intercultural transformation. Let's see. And then let's celebrate the 16 days of violence against women. We have a ceremony on, it's an interreligious ceremony for gender justice that is called Spiritualities and Resistance. But the indigenous theologies talk not just about resistance, but re-existence. So I leave that as a challenge for all of us, how to act from a re-existent stance.
Well, are you exhausted? All right, I'm so edified by these colleagues from other parts of the world who couldn't be with us, but who have brought us some very important insights. I want to ask us two questions now. One, what are the top priorities of your community? What are the, if you can list some top priorities, and how can we link, second question, how can we link more closely the richness that's around this circle, that's in this Zoom, and what can we do with it? That's really the issue. This is the breaking glass moment. What do we do? How do we somehow make a more publicly accessible statement of what we are experiencing here and what we see as ways forward? And this re-existence is a very, very good term. Let me invite the group gathered here to move into small groups to do this in 15 minutes to do it. No, I know, this is like speed dating. But there's a behind me, two groups go in there. There can be 4 groups in the 4 corners of this room. Take your chairs. Take 15 minutes, your top issues, what your communities face as their top issues. And the second is, what specific thing can we do that will help us to, in the year following, the year coming, how can we work more closely together? Because I feel like this is an incredible resource, and we don't want to squander it at a time when it's urgently needed. So we'll be back in 15 minutes, small groups, 15 minutes online, and we'll see where we go. Okay? Okay.
So those who can speak out against the war Gaza and so on should do that, and other people can speak out against violence done in the United States, for instance. So you have to take care of who can say what and but spread the problems that we have, and then see how people can find answers.
Yeah.
And who can support.
And Rosemary Ganley made the important point about the anti-American sentiment in the world. And I ran into a group of South Korean women this afternoon in the elevator. And my first intuition was to thank them for coming. That they would come to the AR when it's here is a sign of extraordinary courage on their part. And deep respect for those of us who are living this in a daily way. And I couldn't thank them enough. They're really very important colleagues to have with us.
Yeah, in my group, we talked about destruction and distraction to constructive ideologies. And we talked about trying to empower the young people and their voices and making them understand that their voices matter. So in spaces where you can empower a young voice, a young person to be an activist, that becomes an opportunity for you to participate. We also talked about what we are doing is good, so we have to do that in a loud way. So to get this way of being louder of what we are doing.
Amplify those voices.
Amplify.
Yes. Who else? Let's hear from you. Yes.
For the minutes, not everybody knows that the Women's Caucus of AR and SPL is supposed to be closed for financial reasons, and we are fighting. Many of us are here. We are meeting once per month via Zoom, and we are fighting for keeping this fighting space.
Good. And send us that kind of information. We'll send it out to the list. Any other bulletins of that sort we'll send to the list. Let's hear from one or two other people about the issues. Any other issues? I mean, our speakers have given us such synthetic, the moral injury, the pain, the extent to which this inter-imperialism. I mean, these are things that echo with me as top issues. How about some others? What are we missing?
I think we are missing corruption, especially in African countries, because this is taking us back in immense ways.
Right.
And a little bit systemic because it is up there politically, and it trickles down real fast to the very poor people who are looking up to the people that they elect.
Yeah.
And the corruption kind of becomes supported from the big spaces and quarters to a point that you lack with no strategies to counter it.
Yeah.
So people just live by.
How about if we turn to the Zoom? Are there any? Can someone look at the chat there and see if there are things that we should be mentioning here as well, or anybody on the Zoom who wants to make a comment? This would be the moment. And then I want to finalize this meeting with, what shall we do to be more intentionally connected and louder in this year? This is really the question. So let's hold on one second, Chance. Let's see if we hear from the. Can we hear from the Zoom community?
Well, Mary, I just I wanted to emphasize. Okay, one thing I had meant to say in my presentation in terms of how we knock them down is ICE is a big mistake. ICE is radicalizing because we've got people masked looking like Gestapo things and frogs, and Rosemary wearing her frog thing. But it's got clergy standing on the clergy standing on the front line getting pepper sprayed by these goons. And it is really radicalizing for people seeing that. And 30,000 young people just walked out of the Charlotte schools because ICE came to town. And, you know, young people, we got to get the young people engaged. And they are engaging themselves. I mean, that's not something we need to do, but we need to encourage it and support it. And, you know, I guess you get young white males when they're sufficiently pissed off. So hopefully they will do that instead. But Turning Point USA is recruiting in the schools. Where we used to live in Colorado, it has been approved for two groups of Charlie Kirks to recruit in the schools. And I would tell you, I would be at those school board meetings in a heartbeat to say you cannot do politically right-wing or any organizing in the schools. And our small group was very powerful, very poignant. And if anybody else in the small group wants to say anything, but just let me say it was very meaningful to me.
Great, thank you. One more person on the Zoom, and then we're going to close out here. People can continue their conversations on the Zoom. We'll leave the Zoom open and conversations here, but I like to honor the time limits that we set so we keep a decent agenda. One more person from the Zoom? Or something from the chat?
In the meantime, I'll call from here. What shall we do? What will be two things that we do between now and let's go ahead here. Yeah, what will be ways to pull? I mean, one of the things we can do is we can socialize Pui-Lan's podcast, Susan's blog, Susan's Substack. We should socialize those and use those as discussion tools. I think that's one thing. But what are some other things? What about a statement?
What would be that statement?
Yeah, I think we should put out a statement that says, that puts us on the record. It's just my opinion, but we can do it. Yeah.
I mean, one action I wanted to say is boycott Tesla, boycott Spotify, boycott anybody who's supporting ISIS in the ads wherever they are.
Yeah, boycotts are certainly. Yeah. But what about us? Let's think of it.
I found Pui-Lan's brutalism. I found Pui-Lan's brutalism to be really anchoring. Any statement might develop out of that. Just my impression of the time. These are brutal bastards, and they have to be called out. Anyway,
the brutalism analysis really caught attention. Okay. Yes.
From what you're saying, I think there is this thing about shouting out about the things that we are already doing. So, like your podcast, we should all be looking at those, but not just sharing it on this platform. We should be sharing it with our neighbors. We should look at it and we should say, this is great. And when I'm sitting on the bridge with my son, chatting to people for the 2 hours I'm there, I get my phone out and I look at this great podcast. I post it on my social media. I talk about, what Tracy is doing, and it changes my contractor who voted for Trump. I think it's kind of unbelievable that we can share the things that we're doing here in sort of this academic framework, but I don't think that's true. I think that we actually have to be talking about what we're doing in our normal everyday lives. Here, amplifying what obviously is happening here in ordinary places.
Yeah, I'm going to sing the moral injury song a lot. I think this is a very key piece of what you got to on the depths of it. A really key piece. Really key piece.
To gather is one thing that gather the place and sharing it. We can all share it.
Speaking of which, May 13th will be our mid-year meeting on Zoom. May 13th, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern Time. We'll send that out, but we do have a mid-year meeting now where everybody's on Zoom.
How about intergenerational broadcasting and interviewing with some of the I think it was Gen Z who got them on Mondani in New York. I don't know how much newspaper coverage my son and his actions are going to take, if they're putting their bodies in front of alligator Alcatraz this weekend.
Yeah.
They gathered from all around the country.
Yeah.
Write an article only about it.
Yeah, critically important, and also for our younger colleagues to take back to your colleagues and bring back and tell us how we can be helpful too. Some of us are going to give money.
Some of this is
also going to be funding. Some of us are going to use.
We just had a meeting put on 15 young feminist Catholics. We didn't even go. We just said, here, have this meeting and decide what you're going to do next. And those are the ways in which talk about philanthropy. And there are ways in which that can also be a piece of the work. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add that we need that type of solidarity, especially because I guess in this intersection between feminism and the church. In Chile, church will not give us any money, and then feminists will think, why do you church? Right? So, so in this connection between grassroots movements and the academy, south to south and north to south solidarity, I think resources like economic resources are really key to gather people. I just organized a national gathering a couple of months ago, and without some funding that we received from the US, we couldn't have even meet. So in person, those kind of initiatives.
They're not really. Absolutely. Strategic funding is a critical piece. I want to thank anybody else before we conclude. I simply want to thank everybody for being here. This was a really important gathering, and I have to say, one of the most important of all the ones that we've had. And the fact that we have had such a breadth of participation with our 25 to 30 people on Zoom, and they seem to have had a grand time. I can't wait to talk with some of them. They seem to have had a grand time talking about their groups. But I want to thank each and every one of you, especially those who came and brought words of wisdom, those who came and brought words of experience, those who came and especially from other countries. You honor us to come at this time to spend your money in this fashion household that we are coming in at the moment, and it is it's serious. And I talk about it for young people, for people of color, what was described about ICE agents going in places. We know from our own water office where we've had ICE agents coming, taking people out in shackles from our building, as I mentioned. This is a very serious time. And it is for people to come from other countries. We can't thank you enough. We can't tell you how much we need you, and how much we learn from you, and how much you give us hope in this world. So a special thank you to those who come from other countries. And that includes Canada, where I get most of my support from people like Rosemary B who are doing this work every day. So thanks to one and all. You know, the Grail, which is the group that one of the groups that Monica belongs to, the Grail has a saying, together we're a genius. Together we're a genius. And I think that the work of justice making requires genius at this point. And together we're a genius. Thank you so much for being in touch with us at Water. Anyway,
Mary, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been great. So thank you especially to our IT people. I take my hat off. I bow deeply to them. Love Caroline and I'm getting it. And really, it's hard work, and you did a good job. You did a good job under duress.
Thanks, everybody. Hang around if you want. Keep the Zoom open.
Thank you. And Monica, you'll be glad to hear that that's the second time this week I've heard the Grail quote about how we're better together.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that lovely? It came up as part of our virtual delegation to the climate talks as well. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Great to meet you.
You as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Great
all.
to be with you all.
It's so much hope. Thank you.
Audio.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm so thrilled that you're here. Wait, let me move back.
Thanks, Mary. Great to see you.
Here on Zoom. I want to talk to all of you and find out what your experience was. It looks like you had as much fun as we did, and it's really a tremendous experience to hear from you and to know that you're doing this work and that we're all doing it together. So more soon for water, but again, our deepest thanks, reverend bow to your participation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mary.
So good to see you.